Hi, I'm Devon Anderson. I'm a former prosecutor, judge, defense attorney, elected DA, and alcoholic. This is Beyond the Bar, a podcast where justice meets recovery. I've been working in the criminal justice system in Houston, Texas for the last 33 years. And so many people in the system and who work in the system have substance use disorder issues and mental health problems, sometimes both. There's help for everybody, but it's kind of hard to find. And I'm hoping that this podcast will change that. I'm not a lawyer. Well, I'm still a lawyer, but I don't practice anymore. I am running a nonprofit called Justice Forward, and we help people in treatment courts. Those are courts that instead of locking people up for being addicted to substances or having mental health issues, instead they get treatment, and they end up, most of them, not getting rearrested. Never heard of treatment courts? Well, it's like the best kept secret in the criminal justice system, and they can be hard to access if you don't know about them. So I'm going to be talking to people who are working in the courts and who've graduated from these programs, because the life-changing transformations that you see in these courts is remarkable. Also, concerning people who worked in the criminal justice system, it can be hard to ask for help. You may know you have a problem, but you're worried you're going to lose your job or you're going to be embarrassed. But the fact is, for prosecutors, defense attorneys, judges, probation officers, clerks, bailiffs, all the people in a courtroom, a lot of times in criminal law, they can suffer from secondhand trauma. I know I did, and didn't realize it for many years. So I want to talk to people who are in the system who've gotten help, and I'm going to start with myself. This is my story. I have 16 years sobriety. So my sober date is April 16th, 2009. And I did it kind of the hard way, the white knuckle way. I just recently got into AA, like in October of last year. And the way that people tell their stories in AA is they go way back to the beginning. I don't think I'm telling any secrets by saying that, but the reason they go back to the beginning is that your families can so much screw you up. And also, a lot of this is genetic. So I'm going to start at the beginning with my parents, who met in high school in Chicago at a national debate championship where my mom beat my dad. And they were both from Texas, and they didn't see each other again until college, where they both ended up at SMU in Dallas and continued debating. So they started dating, fell in love, got married, went to Austin, and my dad went to law school, and my mom was getting her master's in history there. And they were very different people. The biggest difference was drinking. My mom is the only person I know who got drunk one time on her honeymoon in Acapulco, had a horrible hangover the next day, and never got drunk again the rest of her life. Like literally, I don't know anybody like that. And so I remember her drinking, like having a drink, but I never in my entire life saw her have more than one drink. My dad, on the other hand, came from a family of alcoholics. His sister, literally my aunt, drank herself to death. My dad kind of low-key did too, but was a little healthier, but I'm sure that was the cause of his death. My grandparents had a problem. So, kind of doomed from the beginning. She started noticing, she would say he would sit and drink a six-pack and it didn't even affect him. And I'm like, oh, that sounds familiar. Anyway, he started like losing his temper. She told me much later that he put his fist through a wall. I remember him yelling at me when I was little because I fed his fish, and he was mad about it. So they basically got divorced when I was 5 years old. And I really can't thank my mother enough for that, quite frankly, because I know a lot of people who are children of adult alcoholics, and it's not pretty. And they're all in Al-Anon, right? And some of them are in AA too, or NA, whatever. So I feel like she saved me a lot there. We were super poor when they divorced, as is typical. The wife is usually the one to suffer financially. But my mom kept on with her education and ended up getting her PhD. And she took the first job that she could get, which was at Baylor University in Waco, Texas, buckle of the Bible Belt. And the funny thing about that is that my mom was super liberal. She's what we call a yellow dog Democrat, which means in Texas that you'd rather vote for a yellow dog than a Republican. She was a feminist, ardent feminist, especially in the 70s. And she was agnostic. So, and she was divorced. So it was like, should have been a pariah, but she was so good at her job and she got tenure and she published that they could never get rid of her. And she gave them hell for 36 years, which I absolutely loved. So this is the woman that I was raised by myself in Waco, Texas. So when my friends were going to church, I wasn't. It was a little weird. I was also raised as a feminist. And, a lot of my friends were not, kind of the opposite, right? Going to go to get your MRS degree or whatever. But it all worked. So I was good at school. I did well. I went into high school. And like most people, I think it was high school. It might have been 8th grade, quite honestly. But I had my first drink, which was under a bridge at the lake in Waco. And it was like Tickle Pink or some god-awful shit like that. And I ended up drinking like pretty much everybody in Waco did, which was on the weekends. We're in Waco, freaking Texas. There's not a lot to do. So we go to the Friday night football game, and then we go to a party. And we had a lot of keg parties in cornfields, people's houses when the parents were out of town. It's nothing. It's like America, right? And that was it. It did not interfere with my school. I did really well, and I got accepted to the University of Texas in Austin, Texas, which is like probably the worst place you can go if you have a gene for alcoholism, but who knew? We didn't know about that back in the 80s. So I went there. My mom was like, you need to pledge a sorority so you'll meet your friends, and like everybody else was doing it. So I did, and lived in a dorm. And what I did not understand until like the second week I was there is, oh shit, I don't have a curfew. I can do what I want to do. This sorority thing means there's parties Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night every single week. And the only thing I have to do is find a date, which I hated, and get dressed up in whatever theme the party was, which I also hated. But I got to drink. And so that's when I started like blackout drinking. No joke. I won't go into details, but just maybe I will at some other later podcast, but let's keep it at the 30,000 feet right now and just say, I did not get arrested. I'll clear that up right now, but probably should have been, at least for PI, so many times, but I had a great time. And I was still good in school because Sunday would come around and that was school day, no matter how badly I felt. And quite often I felt bad, although it was a 20-year-old hangover. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like a 40-year-old hangover. So it was doable. I would get up, do my homework, go to class all week. And then Thursday night, it was party night. And because I did well, I knew I was going to law school. And I actually went to law school wanting to be a prosecutor. Again, another story for another time. But I applied to Texas law schools and got into UT and Baylor. And honestly, should have gone to Baylor because it was more of a litigation school. But because my boyfriend, who had been at Baylor the whole time, was coming to UT, I'm like, oh my God, we get to be together. And it's going to be so great. And I'm still going to be in Austin. And it was literally, 2020 hindsight, the worst decision, because I really think if you go to law school where you go to college, you're going to have a problem because you're going to still think you're in college. And I know I did. And it was even worse because for some reason, the legal profession attracts alcoholics in a big way. And that is like maybe I'll get a psychiatrist on here one day to talk about why, but the legal profession has such a high rate of alcoholism. It's crazy. So I'm like, wow, there's like so many fun people going to law school. And there's a bar that's a block away from the law school. And we kind of moved from the 6th Street clubs where I'd go dancing in college to the bars where we could have really intense conversations. And my drinking expanded past Thursday, Friday, Saturday to whenever the fuck we were out of class or whatever, And sorry, that was my first F-bomb. It probably won't be my last. I apologize. That's just me. Side note, when you're a prosecutor, the language is filthy, and I've never been able to break the habit. So lots of fun in law school, too much fun, affected my schooling for the first time. I ended up fine. There's a saying in the legal world that the best trial lawyers are C students. So I beat that a little bit, but not by much. So anyway, I finished law school, still had not been arrested, although I had been pulled over on South Congress, no, not South Congress, Congress by the Capitol in Austin with a carload of people. I was intoxicated. We'd just left Maggie Mays. He made me do field sobriety tests and did not arrest me. So that speaks to my alcoholic tolerance, and it kind of empowered me, I would say. That was not a good thing, because then I thought I was a good drunk driver. Just being honest, not gonna lie about this or sugarcoat it. So I got my dream job out of law school, which was the DA's office in Houston, Texas. It was the biggest and the best, and I knew that I would get a lot of trials, and I loved it. It was literally the best job for so many reasons. The biggest one was I was 26 years old. I had my own apartment. I had a paycheck. Okay, we didn't make a lot of money, but it was plenty for me. I was in Houston, which was so fun, so many great places to go, and everybody I worked with was younger than 30. Because when you go to a DA's office, you start off in the misdemeanor division. So they don't want you screwing up felonies, right? So you're trying DWIs, ironically, assaults, trespass, stuff like that. And even your supervisor is like 28, 29, 30 years old. And so we had a blast. We would work our asses off, 80-hour weeks. The minute we got off work, we go to a bar on Market Square called Pat and Pete's, because the reason I liked it is they serve peanuts in the shell. And Danetta, yes, we had a waitress named Danetta. So Danetta, if you're watching this, hi, remember me? We were there all the time. I had some running buddies, 3 women I ran with. There was 4 of us. And we would walk in and she'd have ice cold Miller Lite bottles sitting on the table waiting for us. And we drank and we talked about what happened that day. Oh, I lost this case. Oh, I won this case. Oh, shit, I've got a dog I got to try tomorrow. What do I do? We talked about people. It was awesome. It was like a big therapy session after work every day. And then we drove home intoxicated. Not pretty. That's the truth. So it was kind of out of the frying pan. Into the fire, being at that office. I made great friends, lifelong friends. And I stayed there for like 12 and a half years. I met my husband there, Mike Anderson, who was 10 years ahead of me. He was at the office, so 10 years older than me, total rock star. The first time I saw him, I'm like, who is that guy? Because he looked like a movie star. Everybody called him the Marlboro Man because he had a mustache, really good looking. Like, I really thought, how is he not in the movies? I'm not kidding. And I was super intimidated by him and never, it was just like, hi, kind of dorky. But one night we ended up in a bar together and I had this horrible case that had been dumped on me. By then I was in felony court. It was a high profile, just piece of shit, attempted sexual assault that a division chief had left me to try. My boss was nowhere to be found. And I was moaning about it, like, what am I going to do? And Mike Anderson said, I'll try it with you. And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, I'll try it with you. This sounds fun. And I'm like, oh my God. He was like, it was like having God descend from the heavens and say they were going to try a case with you. So we tried the case and low-key got our asses kicked. We put a nut on the jury, which only takes one. And we got a misdemeanor instead of a felony, but we ended up started dating after that. And we had so much fun together. He drank, of course, like everybody did, but not like I did. He drank a lot. He had a high tolerance, but he rarely got super drunk. Like, I just didn't see him do that very much. And we would fight when I would get drunk. And we dated for a while, and he broke up with me over drinking. He said, "You've got a problem. This is not working. We are miserable because of your drinking," and broke up with me. And I was literally devastated. That is the biggest consequence to date at that time that I had had for drinking. And I remember crying to my mom going, "I really thought we were going to get married." And I was heartbroken. And he started coming around like 2 weeks later, like, "You want to go do this?" I'm like, "No. I mean, can't we just be friends?" "No, I'm not going to be your friend, you know?" Just no. And that shocked him. And so whatever, we ended up getting back together. Clearly, since I said my husband, it's kind of a giveaway that we did stay together. I did cut back on my drinking and watched it around him. And people think that if you're a true alcoholic, you can't do that, and that's not true. You can. You can quit, and then you can start up again. I didn't quit, but I toned it down around him. I went out with my friends and got drunk. I just toned it down around him. And one thing led to another, and we got married. He was a judge by then. He had left the DA's office and run for judge while we were engaged, and because he didn't want to get married until the election was over, which was great because that was just a whole different level of weirdness. And so he was on the bench. I was still at the office. I was a chief prosecutor, which meant that I was running a district court, that I got to kind of pick and choose what trials I wanted, but I was definitely responsible for capital murders. And I was still drinking, but I don't remember any problems really at that time, except I was drinking my usual amount. But I got this case in that ended up being a serial killer named Rafael. It's actually, his full name was Angel Maturino Resendez, but most people knew him as the railcar killer. This was in the late 90s. And he traveled around the country on jumping trains, and then he'd get off, kill someone, rob them, steal their stuff, drive it down to Mexico, and sell it. His wife would sell it for him in Mexico. And so when we first got it, we knew it was weird, but because it was a sexual assault murder of a woman, a doctor in West U, which was an affluent area in Houston, and got a lot of media attention. And then a school teacher ended up dead here as well. Same thing. Both of them lived right off the railroad tracks. So it blew up into this huge thing. DNA, they got a hit on a database. They solved a case in Kentucky. I'll talk about all this at some other time. Maybe I'll get the only living victim here. Maybe she can be on the podcast sometime. Holly. Hi, Holly. So anyway, high profile, high stress. My boss, Johnny Holmes, told me, "I have to try it with you." And I'm like, dear God, I was a baby chief. I was probably I think I was like 34 years old. I was the only woman on the trial team. Everybody else was at least 20 years older than me. They were like the best prosecutors in the office. It was super intimidating. And Johnny Holmes was like, "You're going to do the media." I'm like, okay. So I would have like a bank of cameras, and I'm supposed to talk about this. It was terrifying. So my drinking kind of ticked up, as you can imagine. I use drinking a lot for stress management. The point is, the reason I'm telling this is that we got through the trial, got the death penalty, and we had a vacation planned for a place called Rockport on the coast. And a bunch of prosecutors were going down there. We had a house. And man, I was like done. I think I started drinking on the way down there. Mike was driving. I was wasted the entire weekend to the point where I fell off a boat fully clothed. I ran over a mailbox, and why I was driving to this day, I still don't know. And on the way back to Houston, Mike again said, "You have a problem. You've got to quit. This is not sustainable." And I had the worst hangover. I remember my head felt like glass, and I was crying. I'm like, "I know you're right. This is terrible. I've got to stop." All the hangover remorse stuff. And so the next morning I woke up and I felt kind of different. And I took a pregnancy test and found out I was pregnant. And I'm like, oh my God, I've broken my child. Like, I have drank to excess on this little life inside of me. And I was really relieved to know from my doctor, and I'm not laughing about it, but it is like, I literally went in there going, is my child okay? I think I've, already screwed it up. And he said, no, the nervous system isn't formed until whatever weeks. You're fine. I'm like, thank God I got a pass on that again. And my beautiful son, Sam, who I love, of course, was born. I kind of skipped something. I literally quit drinking that day. I did not have another drink for 5 years. I had my son, Sam. I stayed home with him for 10 months, went back to the office, got pregnant again, had my daughter, Bryn. I stayed home with her for a while, went back to work. And I was sober the whole time. And Mike quit with me. He actually trained for a marathon while I was grotesquely pregnant, which was funny. So we were sober. I was still at the office. But at that point, I decided that I was super burned out after that serial killer case. And instead of just moving to a different part of the office, Mike was like, hey, this lady's retiring. This judge was retiring, and why don't you run for her bench? And I knew enough about what Mike did that I thought, well, that might be a good kind of step back, where I'm not just busting my ass on these horrifying cases. And so I ran and was elected to the bench, a district court, and kind of knew what I was going to do. I knew what I was doing, but I got what I did not anticipate was that when you're a prosecutor and you're working with crime scene photos, autopsy pictures, the horrors of the crime, you're working with them for months and you're used to them and you get desensitized because you're looking at evidence, you're looking at stab wounds, you're looking at matching that, you know what I mean? So I didn't anticipate that when you're a judge and you have to rule on the admissibility of photographs, you don't get any warning, right? And you've got all the people in the courtroom are watching your face, and you're seeing some horrifying shit and trying to keep a poker face, and it's traumatic. And I really started understanding, like, juries. I felt so bad for juries having to sit on these cases and hearing the horrible things that people do to each other. That's kind of that secondhand trauma that I was talking about earlier. So a lot of that as a judge, no warning, and it's like, bam, right in your face, or you've got some little bitty kid walking up to testify about being molested. I mean, God, it was the worst. And the other part of the job that was horrible was that you're not supposed to have an opinion. You're supposed to be super neutral and just call balls and strikes. And I was terrible at that. I'm an advocate. I have opinions, if you can't tell. And it was really hard to control that and my face, which I do not have a poker face. So it was a big joke in the courthouse, Devon's face. Because I would look at somebody on the witness stand like, really? And I mean, I had to stop. Anyway, the best part of being a judge was I got to be a drug court judge. I was one of the first drug court judges, which is the treatment courts I was talking about earlier. And I got to see people that I thought would never ever have a normal life. The people that you see under bridges and the people panhandling on the side of the road. And I got to see them get drug treatment, get mental health treatment, have a hand in getting some housing, job, going back to school, whatever it was. And then seeing this whole beautiful human being come out of it was just, it changed my whole outlook on that. And my whole outlook on substance use, disorder, and mental health in the criminal justice system. And it's formed my career to this day. So that was the good highlight. That was the bright spot of being a judge. But at one point, it was really kind of early on in my term, we got invited to this wedding in the Hill Country. And it was one of my good friends. It was super fancy. It was at a ranch. It was going to be cool. It was going to be like a whole weekend there. And I don't know what it was, but I told Mike, I want to drink. I'm going to drink at this wedding. I'm going to drink. And he said, are you sure? And I said, oh, yeah, it'll be fine. I'm just going to have some wine. It's like such a special time. It's going to be such a cool wedding. Yeah. So we go, and I remember specifically that glass of Chardonnay. And it was like I had never stopped. that is the thing about quitting drinking when you're an alcoholic and starting up again. It is a lot worse when you start up. And I didn't know that. I didn't know anything about my disease at all, by the way. So I was drinking again. And this time I had little kids. And it was really brutal to have a hangover. So I got into the habit where I would get home from work. I would go, and this is when I was a judge. And this was when I was a drug court judge, okay? I would get home. I would go straight to the refrigerator, pour myself a big old glass of wine, and I would drink all night until I caught a buzz at least, sometimes a little past a buzz. And I did it every night, every single night. And it was not good. I mean, it was not good. My kids, thank God, say they do not remember me drinking, which is such a blessing. But and I know they're going to watch this, and I'm sorry. But I think what it had the most effect on was that I just wasn't present. It kind of built a wall, you know? And I regret that. I really do. The reason I was doing it was because of stress. Just knocking off that stress. Instead of going for a walk, I got a glass of wine instead. And also, I got I'm not a cook. I don't enjoy cooking. I did not know that when I was married and had kids, I was supposed to be the one to figure out dinner every night. Excuse me, how did that happen? Like, he cooked when we met, right? I mean, he was in his 40s when we got married. The man knew how to cook. But I ended up being the one to do it. And partly that's me not going. I mean, I did a couple times. I mean, not a couple, many times go, let's eat, let's order out, let's go out to eat, whatever. But still, I think the resentment of that made me drink a lot. And the drudgery. I just wasn't I'm just not a household. I just did not enjoy household chores. So that went on. That went on until I lost the election. That first, I was on the bench for 4 years. The next election was when President Obama was elected. All the Republicans were swept out, and myself included. And I got so drunk that night, by the way, on election night, and I was a total mess the next day. I didn't know what I was going to do for a living. We needed that second income, like most of America, and I didn't want to go work for the woman who was DA. She was a disaster. Didn't want to do defense. Didn't really want to do defense. Well, I wasn't going to do civil work or anything like that. Really, the only thing left to me was defense work, and this other guy who was a friend of mine and it was a judge who also lost, we opened up a law firm. And it was funny because we didn't really know anything about business and we had to do the LLC and all that stuff. But I can't describe to you how much I hated that job. And I really value, right now, my partner in life is a defense attorney, and I have the utmost respect for him and what he does and for the profession. But for me, it was like wearing my shoes on the wrong feet every day. I could not, and I believe people have a right to a trial and due process. I swear to God, I do. And we helped a lot of people, but it just felt wrong. I was on the wrong side of the courtroom. I had no control over disposition of cases, the setting of cases. It was a very humbling experience. And I was drinking a lot. And I was meeting my friends for lunch and drinking at lunch, and then going to interview potential DWI clients. That was not a good look. And I was going out a lot more. I had a lot more time. As a defense attorney, you have a little bit more time. And it was not good. We were fighting. Me and Mike were fighting a lot. My drinking was getting a lot worse. And I was miserable. And one night, I was going out to meet my friends. I will protect the names of the innocent. And I was walking out the door, and I can still see it in my mind's eye, the kitchen, and Mike saying, I feel like you are drinking to get through our life together. And it was like he might as well have slapped me across the face. What Mike meant was, you're not here, like I had already said. I wasn't present. You're not stopping. We've had this problem, and this could be the end of our marriage. You need to wake up. And I heard all of that, But I went out and got drunk. So I heard it, and I drank, and I got drunk with my friends. And the next morning, that is my sobriety date, April 2009. I did not drink again. I have not had a drink since then. And I know that's a high bottom. That's what it's called in AA. People think you have to hit rock bottom. So, no, I didn't get arrested, thank God. I didn't kill anybody in a drunk driving accident, thank God. By the grace of God, I did not do any of those things. And it was pure luck that I didn't, by the way. But I was going to lose my marriage and possibly my kids, and I knew that. So I quit. I white-knuckled. And Mike quit with me. And we just hid from everybody for like 6 months. We didn't go to parties. We did nothing like that. We just took care of our kids, went to church, went to sports events, went to the movies. That was it. So people wonder why or how I did that. And I'm going to say this as a pro tip. I was a smoker. And when I quit smoking, when I found out I was pregnant, I did a lot of research at that time on how to quit smoking. And triggers were the biggest thing. Triggers. What makes you want to smoke? And like some people are like, oh, I only smoke when I drink. Well, I was a pack-a-day smoker, okay? So I did everything they said. I got my teeth cleaned. I got my car cleaned. I avoided situations where I, would want a cigarette. So I adapted that for drinking. And like I said, I basically was a recluse for 6 months, 8 months, something like that. And it worked for me. And it was just grit. It was just grit and determination, and I can't explain it any other way. I was lonely. I look back now. I was, I kept hanging out with the same people who were drinking because I loved them. They were my best friends. But I felt awkward around them and weird. I felt awkward at parties. I still do, by the way. It's still a struggle for me. It's whatever. I got through it. And so today I'm sober, and thank God my life is 100 times better. And I am, because I'm in AA, I have a community to lean on. I don't have to do this alone. I'm not by myself. I can call somebody if I want to drink. I still want to drink, y'all, okay, sometimes. 16 years later, it never stops. It never stops. I've heard people talk about being 30 years sober and going back out. And I'm really thankful that I'm in the program and that I'm meeting people and I'm working in recovery. It helps a lot to help other people find recovery. So that's what I'm kind of doing with this podcast. So just to wrap up my life and finish, you may have caught that I said I have a life partner now. Since I've been sober, I lost my husband, Mike. He decided to run for district attorney when he was a retired senior judge and was elected. And I quit my law practice and went back home just to take care of the kids. And I thought it was going to be kind of interesting to try to be a housewife, for a while until I figured out what I wanted to do. But right after Mike was elected, he was diagnosed with cancer and passed away. It was fast, and it was horrible. It's the worst thing I've ever been through in my life. And he died 8 months later. And a lot of people have asked me how I didn't relapse then. And, how can you do that when you're the sole parent of 2 kids who are depending on you? I mean, I wanted to go lay down and die. I mean, I wanted to lay down and just not get out of bed like you see in movies, but I couldn't do that. So I had to figure out what I was going to do. I didn't have a job. So Mike had told me the whole time he was dying that he wanted me to seek the governor's appointment to be DA. And I told him, that is crazy. That is no. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. And he said, you have the same resume as I do. What's the difference? You ran the campaign with me. You know the office. You need to do it. We don't need, you know what I wanted to do. We have the same ideas of what the office needs. And so I swear to God, 3 weeks after he left, people started calling me about it, encouraging me to do it. And out of desperation, out of fear, I did it. And I got the appointment from Governor Perry. So I became the elected district attorney of like the 4th largest city in the country, I think 3rd largest county, over 600 employees, $88 million budget, I think. It was crazy. I just thought I knew, of course I thought I knew about the office because I'd been there so long, but there's so many facets to it. And I loved the job. The job was great. A lot of policy. I got to make treatment the default for drug users and alcoholics instead of incarceration. I got to do some really cool things. We did great things in that office. The team that I had around me, but it was a meat grinder of a job. It was super stressful. It was crazy. I mean, there was an emergency literally every day. It was nuts, but fun, sort of, too. So I had 2 high-profile countywide elections, won the first one, lost the second one. Second one was heartbreaking. The new DA came in and fired 35 of the best prosecutors in the country off the bat. I felt responsible for that, still do. My apologies to them and to their families. I, once again, was without a job, and that's when I started deciding that I wanted to work in nonprofits, and couldn't believe I ended up at this job. With helping people in the criminal justice system was just super cool. A lot of synchronicity there. But also, since I've been sober, about a couple of years after that, I got breast cancer. Cannot make this up. I caught it early. I'm 5 years in remission. I'm good. But, it's like, really? And my mom moved to Houston, so it was so fun having her here, especially while I was DA, and she got dementia. So that was a slow decline for 5 years. It was literally horrible. And she passed away 2 years ago. And I have an empty nest because both my kids went off to college. So all those things have happened. I'm sure over the next however many podcasts people want to watch, I'll be talking about those things and how to stay sober through things like that, because you can. Anyway, that's it. I mean, that's my story. I've got a great life now. Kids are good. I've got a great life partner who's sober too, who works a great program. He's wonderful. He's got great kids. It's just everything is good. So I am into helping. This is what I want from this podcast. We're going to drop another one next week. I'm going to be bringing in really amazing people so they can tell their stories too. But anyway, thanks for listening.